welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, and welcome to Turn the Page podcast. I'm Katherine, your friendly neighborhood reference librarian, and today I'm here with a well-known and well-loved author, Sheila Roberts. Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so excited to talk with you, and I do love libraries. Before I go off on a bunny trail and rave about libraries, in case somebody doesn't know who I am, as you said, I'm Sheila Roberts. I'm a USA Today and Publishers Weekly best-selling author. I have been around forever and have had the fun of seeing some of my books made into movies for different TV channels like Hallmark and Lifetime, and so it's very fun. I love what I do for a living. I love getting a chance to talk with readers and to speak with librarians. I'm sure you've heard this from many an author, but libraries played such a big part in my life as a child. I can still in my mind envision the children's book section in this little neighborhood library that we had. It was a Carnegie library, and it was gorgeous. They had the two lions guarding the door when you walked up the stairs, the two cement lions, and the room, it was hardwood in there. And I can remember the little bench I'd sit on and how all those books just roped around me and just enfolded me. And so libraries just really do have a special place in my heart. I think they're a wonderful resource for so many things, and also a great place to discover new writers. Many of us these days are on tight budgets, and much as we authors would love you all to just rush out and buy every single book we've ever written, that isn't always possible, and especially if you're trying out a new author to see if you're a match. This is a beautiful way to get to do that that's budget friendly. So, love libraries.
That is so lovely of you to say, and I couldn't agree more, because I myself, I'm still guilty of, going on major book hauls and buying all these books.
Oh,
And
yes.
then, I have found that book buying and book reading are two different hobbies, unfortunately.
Yeah. I do understand people have budget constraints. Of course, we love it when you buy our books because that is just, one of my friends once said, the best thing you can get an author for her birthday is to buy a copy of her book. I thought that is a good thing to keep in mind. But again, you just provide such a service. And so I'm delighted to be chatting with you today.
And I am delighted to be chatting with you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And today, what we're going to be talking about is your upcoming book, Love on the Shelf. Very interesting read. Do you want to give us like a quick run of what Love on the Shelf is about?
It's kind of a fun little battle of the sexes rom-com. We have got our bad boy, and he's definitely very bad at the beginning. I'm hoping readers will be patient because he's going to learn his lesson by the end of the book. But he is a radio sports personality, kind of turned shock jock, who has just decided that romance novels are just completely useless and a bad influence, bad for relationships, bad. Don't read them. And he is in defense of men because he feels like women tend to be just bullying men and just, leading them around by the nose. And he's going to make a change in all of that. And he actually issues a challenge to see if anybody wants to come on air and debate me about why romance novels are valuable. Bring it on. And our poor little shy bookstore owner who owns a romance bookstore, Alice, somehow winds up having to rise to the challenge, and things just go downhill from there. We have all kinds of crazy things that happen, and he's a little bit like, I'm sure you're familiar with the poem The Sorcerer's Apprentice, where we have the little apprentice and he's a little lazy and he just decides he's going to cast a spell and have one of the brooms do his job of fetching water. Well, the spell goes out of control. The broom can't stop fetching water. Pretty soon there's a flood everywhere, and he's created this monster. And our hero, Parker Black, has done that with what he started on his little rampage, and it's all just completely gets out of hand, and he's beginning to think, what have I done, and was I really right after all? And so much of the story and all the funny stuff that happens in between is him realizing, wait a minute, I think I might have been wrong about some of this. And of course, Alice herself is going to have to grow a little and realize, hey, I can do more than I think I can, and I can be bold in life. And so I'm hoping when readers read that, they will identify with Alice and say, hey, I can be bold, and it's okay for me to like the books that I like. And it is okay for me to get out there and make a difference in life.
I will say that that is definitely a message I did get from Alice, as well as her mom, Nola. So Alice and her mom, Nola, are co-owners for AGA Bookstore, which is Happily Ever After Bookstore, where everyone can find their happily ever after. And not only that, but they have a podcast where they interview authors, which was my little inception moment where I went, oh.
It's so much fun to do, isn't it? I mean, I love
Yeah, it
doing it.
is. But it is very interesting. And like that was one of the messages that came across very clear from Alice and Nola is that they want their listeners to embrace who they are and what they love, to not change or diminish themselves to please others. And their podcast is very uplifting for their listeners, and I enjoyed the message that they put across. On the flip side, we had Parker and his podcast.
Oh, he's horrible. Isn't he a little stinker?
Yeah, stinker is one way to put it. It was very interesting to see the difference between those two podcasts as a way to view both characters, because while Alice's podcast is so positive and uplifting, a lot of what Parker's podcast is belittling and demeaning women and romance readers, so that we can boost up the morale of men who are apparently, quote unquote, an endangered species in America.
Yes.
Which, if I could reach through a book and throttle someone, it would have happened a couple times.
I'm hoping readers will be patient with Parker and realize that he is going to have an epiphany here along the way. But yeah, he's not a happy camper. And you look at that, and of course, and Parker has his reasons, but I think that's an interesting example too of how sometimes we take what's happening in our own little tiny corner of the world or what's happening to us and we blow it up and we make these huge generalized statements. And when I first was getting the idea for the book, I was seeing a lot of generalized statements. There was a lot of male bashing going on, in the last couple of years of guys. And if you look at some of the different comments on social media, it's like, is there a good man out there anywhere? And I think we do tend to do that. A lot of comments from people they'd had a bad relationship and therefore all men were bad. And I think that's a dangerous thing, no matter which way the pendulum is swinging. When we make these kind of blanket statements about the other sex, it doesn't do much for unifying us. And I think it's important to remember, that not all men are cheaters and beaters, as Parker says, and not all women are out to just use men and take advantage of them. And I think that's a very important thing for us to be keeping in mind, because it just feels like on so many levels our culture is getting so polarized, and at least we could be there for each other as men and women and be uplifting each other, encouraging each other.
And I bring up Parker obviously because he is one of two main characters. We spend a lot of time with Parker and we're in his head a lot. But you said, tiny corners of the world create large statements and generalizations. And you're right, there's a lot of men versus women rhetoric online and in the world. And it's also in your book a bit, because while Alice is a bit more gentle and uplifting, her sister
oh my gosh
is going through something else.
her, her sister is almost like, well, she's like the other side of Parker almost. They both are just so out there and so that, yes, and the sister obviously needs to have some epiphanies along the way too, which she does. And she's a good example. I mean, she loves to blame Parker for her marriage problems. And really, when it comes right down to it, the one who's most responsible for your problems, who's causing them, is you. And the one who's most responsible for fixing them is you. I mean, it's very easy to blame everybody else, isn't it, when you're having a problem? But it always comes down to me, myself, and I, and what are we going to do?
When we meet her, she's having marriage problems anyway. She blames a lot of those marriage problems on Parker and his talk show, because her husband is an avid listener and now he's, making these purchases without like any regard to their budget. And she's very upset with him and she's putting a lot of blame on Parker. Then she kind of puts a little bit of blame on her mom and sister for not like going to beat Parker up or like fighting him back. And she's like, this is why we can't have good things in the world. It's because good people do nothing. It's like, go to therapy.
I love it.
Not for nothing. There is a point in time where everybody has like, oh, woe is me. I wish someone would fix this. I wish I didn't have to go through this. And what she's dealing with is hard. But yeah, I was like, I don't know why you think your mom and sister are going to go beat up this talk show host for you to fix your marriage. I think you need to go have a conversation with them.
She just feels like, well, you're the one, you got the romance, but you should be defending all of us. You have the romance bookstore, you should be leading the charge. And again, so don't we often do that in life too? It's like, well, somebody else needs to lead the charge here. It shouldn't be me. It should be somebody else, and sometimes you're the one, like you said, you're the one who needs to lead the charge, so I think that's a really good point. And interesting in that particular marriage, the instance with the husband, I've seen that in real life where sometimes someone influences the husband and, well, who wears the pants in your family? And you should, blah, 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 fill in the blank. And the guy just goes off and runs with it. And I really am a strong believer that in marriage, it's a partnership. You're both working together for the same goals. And if somebody's getting off the rails, then it's time for a little meeting to say, hey, let's get back on track. And remember, we're a team here. And of course, Scarlett had done with that. Well, she'd have had no story.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
in real life, I just love things to be really calm. I don't like confrontation. But of course, if you don't have that in a book, it's just a snooze. So I thought, oh well, what the heck? Let's let everybody be really stupid for a while, and then they can hopefully all get smart by the end of the book. So I'm hoping readers will have I'm sure there will be some readers who are going to throw this book against the wall and say these people are all idiots. But you know what? We all are at some point, aren't we?
Yeah, no, everyone has their moment, and the hope is that you learn from those moments and learn from mistakes and grow as a person. And I think that readers that stick with the book, they'll find a satisfying like arc for a couple of different characters, from where they started to where they end up and the journey in between. But yeah, sometimes that journey in between is rough.
I know you're just like we really are ready to murder, especially Parker. He just really, and even once he's realized that he's changing, he's in this mess that he's created, and how am I going to get out of this? I have really painted myself into a very tiny corner, and now I don't even know what to do. And so, but I was very happy with the ending. I think his grand gesture was appropriate and really showed that he changed as a person. So I was happy with how it all wrapped up. So they got their HEA at HEA Books.
Excellent. There's a lot of different elements to this story that are very topical, but I will say that I thought it was a very interesting exploration of like toxic masculinity. Um,
Mm.
and you keep bringing up the phrase like, that your tiny corner of the world. And that's kind of what it is a real life movement that's happening right now. And, it's this very small group, but it's a very local group of people who are, very share a lot of similar opinions and outlooks that Parker and his producer Jay and that like studio crew, they say, you're going to be a man's man and you're going to, lift men up and put women back in their place. And we're going to boost those ratings. And, if we break a few eggshells along the way, it is what it is. Being stuck in that toxic masculinity, what made you want to explore a character like that? Because we're with Parker a lot. Again, we're looking at his point of view. And there are several instances where he goes, I don't know if I like this. I don't think that this might be going too far. I don't think I want to go through with this. But he's kind of stuck in this bubble where everyone around him is going, no, it's going to be great for ratings. You're doing a lot of great things for good men. And he just keeps rolling along with it. So why would you want to explore a character like Parker, where you're right, some readers are going to have to stick it out and have faith that he's going to change, because in the beginning it's,
Yeah, he's probably one of my less lovable characters that I've ever written, really, at least at the beginning. But I wanted to stick it out with him till the end, till he changed. And I feel like often our attitudes are related to motivation. And I think it's just an interesting time in our culture right now that even the term toxic masculinity can be, I don't want to say misapplied, but I think sometimes we almost don't want men to be human. We want them to be men. And I'm not saying, yes, it's okay to be abusive. I'm not saying that in any way, but I think sometimes we have these high standards for our men. And if they don't meet them, if they don't do everything that is on our checklist, all of a sudden they're just off the list. And I feel again like it's so important to have balance and a little more patience with each other. I think our men need to be more understanding of their women. And I am seeing a turn in that on social media, where there's a lot of talk to guys going, hey, treat your woman right, be kind, love her, appreciate her, and I'm seeing a lot more of that, which I think is great. I feel like I'd like to see more on the other side too, women going, hey, appreciate your guy. And anytime somebody says something to the fact, we women, at least this is what I'm observing in the things I'm reading, we tend to get defensive and say, yeah, but he should be doing blah, blah, blah. Well, if each sex continues to do that and nobody is ever willing to say, but I can start making the change, then we don't get anywhere. So in my perfect world, both men and women would say, hey, what can I do better? And wouldn't that be amazing if we all did that? Wouldn't that be amazing for relationships? If we said, well, he just can't do anything right. If we said, well, what could I do to start improving this relationship? And the same with the guys. What if you said, hey, I still want to be a guy, I want to be manly, but what can I do to really show kindness and appreciation and respect to my wife? It would be such a different world. And in my perfect world, everybody who is a Parker Black becomes a good guy and figures it out. And every Alice owns who she is as a woman and says, you're going to respect me because I deserve respect. So that would be my perfect world. May not happen outside the ending of my book, but that would be my perfect world, because again, we're meant to be working together to build good lives and not pulling against each other and blaming each other. And I just see so much of that happening around me in the culture. I'm very, very blessed to have a great husband, and all my friends happen to have good husbands. My son's a great guy. So I'm not out to get men, but I think a lot of them might have some room for improvement, just like we women might. We can't always be pointing the finger at the other sex and say it's all you, because it's usually both of us have room for improvement. That's my little lecture for the day.
Well, everybody has room for self-growth and therapy.
We do. And yeah, like you said about Scarlett, quit complaining, go to therapy, get some help, don't just expect somebody else to fight your battles for you.
Yes. Well, I don't know if we're going to get that perfect world anytime soon. But I am happy that we're able to get that happily ever after in your book. We got to get them somewhere, so we might as well
That's
get
for
them in our
sure.
books.
Yeah, that's a good argument for why romance novels are a wonderful thing, because they do leave us encouraged and uplifted. And don't we all love a good story?
It's true. And it kind of leads me into one of my last questions for you is that this, Parker and Jay, they have a segment in their show where they are reading segments of romance novels and, critiquing them harshly and, belittling the writers and the women who read them. And this dismissal of romance is not just in your books. It's happening in the real world as well.
Yes.
So, according to a recent article from The Guardian, they said that print sales of romance fiction in the United States has doubled over the past 5 years as of 2025, which is fantastic. We love
Yes.
that. Um, so the romance fiction industry is booming, and yet it's widely ignored or like looked down upon by critics. Why do you think that is?
Boy, such a good question. It really bugs me. And that was another reason behind the book, because I feel like these women needed to be showing this is why romance novels are good, because they are uplifting. And I don't know if it's threatening to some people. I don't see why it would be, or if it just doesn't feel, we often get the criticism, well, it's not really literature. And we're going, well, what is literature? Literature is a story in print. Give me a break. And so that really that bothers me. And I sometimes you think, is there some envy from some of the people who prefer different genres, or who prefer the genre of the more literate books? I don't know how to word that, but I just wonder if there's a little bit of green-eyed, a little bit of envy going on there, like, we should be selling like these guys are selling, and they're not as good as us. I don't think that that's quite fair to measure books in that manner, because, like I said, a good story is a good story, and if you're including a wonderful love story there and a happy ending, that's something it's going to leave your reader feeling happy and encouraged when she's finished reading it. How is that a bad thing? That's just, I don't know. I wish I did have a great explanation for why it is that romance novels have all been so looked down on. So this has been going on for years and years and years. This is, wait, since the 80s, probably even before. But I'm thinking, golly, I'm sorry, but Jane Austen wrote romance novels. And how many of you who are critiquing romance novels, how many of you are Jane Austen, are in a position to be, to be critical? I think uplifting reading in general is always a good thing. And if a lady wants to read a lovely love story that's going to inspire her in her relationship, why not?
Absolutely. And you yourself, you've written, I think I saw over 50 books over the span of your writing career.
Yeah.
I'm sure this has affected you personally at some point or another. Is that true?
Well, it does kind of bug me when the genre that I write in gets dissed. But I think every writer finds their readers, and every writer finds their platform. And I think it's important to it comes back to your corner of the world. It's too late for me to run for president. I'd probably be assassinated anyway, so maybe I won't be doing that. Because I have strong opinions, obviously, But I'm going. So what can I do with the talents I have to make the world a better place? And for me, it's writing a book. I try to make sure my books are always, in the end, that are uplifting, that people come away with a smile and maybe come away with a message or two. And if I'm doing that, then I'm doing my part. So I'm going to continue to write what I write. I love a good story, and I think there are still people out there who love a good story, and that's what I hope to be able to deliver to readers, something that they will enjoy, that maybe will spark discussion. And if I've done that, then I feel like I've done my job.
Well, I look forward to whatever comes next. and whatever other messages you have for readers and any upcoming books you may have. Before we leave for today, is there anything you would like to share with your readers and our listeners?
Other than thank you. Thank you for reading. Thank you for supporting authors. We, like everybody else, we have to pay the bills. And thanks for investing your time and hard-earned money. I realize that everyone's time is limited. Everyone's budget is limited. And the fact that you are willing to spend it on a writer, that is just fabulous of you. And again, I hope readers will continue to support their local libraries because you do offer such a service. So I think that about sums it up. Thanks for the support. Thanks for being readers. Oh, and if you do pick up the book, be a little patient with Parker. He'll learn his lesson.
Well, thank you so much, Sheila, for joining us. Love on the Shelf is coming out very soon. And with that, it is time for us to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.